เราพบน้องทั้ง13คนปลอดภัย
ดีมากนะครับได้คุยกันทีเดียวเลยไม่ต้องกดดันผมโอเคเราเรื่องนี้มากดีมีการส่ง
The moment, that sound, the word, the news from officials, the celebrations afterward as word came that the 12 boys and their soccer coach found alive in that cave network in Thailand more than a week after becoming trapped in that cave that flooded in monsoon rain. So far, divers have been able to bring food and supplies to the boys, but this is just beginning. A sensitive rescue mission is now underway. And who better to give us the perspective on this than one of the members of the international dive team that found the boys. He's Dutch, but he lives in Phuket and teaches. He's a tech dive specialist. My guest this morning is Ben Reminence, and Ben is right there with me. And Ben, I'm Heather. I'm so glad to meet you. Thank you for being on our program.
Hello, Heather.
Listen, you tell me, I was just playing the moment. You were part of that moment, but as a member of the team, what was it like to get that news that the boys had been found?
It's fantastic, partly unbelievable, but yes, it was unbelievable news, especially that they're all alive and mentally well, very weak and skinny, but yes, they were all lucid and yes, so excellent news.
Pretty great relief, I'm sure, but that's exactly what you do as a diving specialist. So help us understand then what comes next. How challenging is the mission to get them out, Ben?
Well, you name it right. This now the biggest challenge comes to get them out, because these boys they can't swim. They definitely can't dive. So they're outweighing the options of, do we teach them to dive quickly, shortly, but it's a 2.5 kilometer swim. Or do we design some suit or a mask to get them out, or any other options, or we keep pumping until the cave goes dry and we can actually walk them out. But weather is not on our side, and they're expecting heavy thunderstorms in the next 48 hours, which might flood the entire cave system.
Which would be devastating, obviously. If they decide to wait out the weather in monsoon season, that's why they're talking about potentially being trapped in there for months, correct?
Yes, that's correct, and that's what surprised me the most. Actually, two diving doctors from the Thai Navy SEALs volunteered to be locked up in the cave with the kids should the system flood, with enough supplies, food and medication for 3 to 4 months until the water resides and the rains stop, which is a remarkable dedication to these kids.
That's a heroic gesture for sure, but that is an extraordinary reality to be faced with. And so the talk this morning from all of the officials I've been reading about this morning, Ben, is of that the former option, as you mentioned, the teaching them to dive and actually then sort of leading them out. How would they do that exactly, to teach the boys who don't know how to swim or dive and get them out safely in that way?
Well, there's something called a tri-scuba dive, which is a few hours of introduction and put a regulator in your mouth and a mask and follow the instructor. So there's a lot of Thai Navy SEALs, and they are actually instructors, and they could take turns to teach them and guide them out of the cave. But like I said, it's a very long cave system. Yesterday the conditions were very favorable. The water was clear, the flow had reduced. But when we arrived, it was very depressing, because the water was brown from mud and there was a very high flow. We were only progressing about 1,000 feet a day, which was, so we had less hope than yesterday.
So that would take, even in the best case scenario, hours to get them out in that way. I mean, is it even doable? Is it even cause for cautious optimism, Ben, that they can get them out this way?
Well, the optimism, I think, in the whole team is what made us find the boys and still keep pushing, despite the lengthy cave system. And you have to imagine it's a labyrinth of tunnels, similar to a Mount Everest expedition. There's different camps in dry spots set up with tanks and equipment and food and radio lines and so on. So it's a very impressive setup. But still, that leaves still about 2.5 kilometers away from the room where the boys are. Now, if it floods the system, then that would mean more than 4 kilometers away from the boys, which would make it virtually impossible to get them out.
Daunting odds, as you say, excitement to have reached them, but the task is just beginning. Will you have any role now? No, you've been part of that key first part, but are you going to be continuing to be involved?
I'm on standby, but right now I need some sleep because I've been 4 days in the cave, and it's quite taxing because it's everything is covered in mud, and and basically you don't see daylight for 4 days, because by the time you get out it's dark, you sleep a few hours, and then you go back in to lay more line to cover that distance with static ropes.
Well, then I'll let you go. You get that rest, most deserved on your part. Thank you for your time with us this morning, and congratulations on what you've been able to achieve thus far. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for having me.